All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Friday here. I'm just giving you, as core students, a heads up on kind of what we've been doing through the past week with the TDA, the close reading, and really giving you a great understanding of hopefully to be able to, get you to see what the article that we read this week was about. Hopefully you read it a couple times already. That was your goal and that was your expectation this week. I put that on to you guys from this week's agenda. That was our focus this week, and hopefully you guys found time to review that article. And what I want to do here is I want to go through the packet with you that hopefully you found throughout on Canvas, and then also what I want to do is I want to give you the prompt, so you know what the prompt is, so you know what you can start writing as you download the packet. I'll show you here. If you go up and you look at start our close reading. This is this week's that we're just finishing up with here. You will probably see some documents under next week's stuff already. I'm trying to put some stuff up ahead of time for next week. But if you click on the complete TDA packet, this is everything you need to get you to open and see sort of what is inside of it. So this is just a PDF. Hopefully you'll be able to see this through Canvas and you can make some sense of this. If you can download this or print this at any point, please do so. It works wonders for you to kind of help you move forward. But the topic of this is about Japanese internment after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Now I know we skipped a lot of the beginnings of World War II, especially on the European side with Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin, those guys coming to power, and how Hitler and Mussolini kind of formed this pact in Europe to begin to start taking over Europe in their process of taking over the world. So when you have the start on Pearl Harbor, why we started at this point, because one, we need to get through this by the third marking period being over, but at the same time, this excerpt to this article is a case study on how individuals and how Americans in the past have feared groups of people based on events that have been negative towards those individuals that have led those events. Specifically, if there is an ethnic group of people that led the attack, and then there are people that share that same ethnicity that live within the United States and how those people are treated. So you can see the packet here, annotation guidelines after the first page, but then you have your article. So the first 3, 4, 5 pages here is your article in terms of what it's made up. Essentially what this article does is it goes back into 2015 and it looks back at the backlash in Paris from the Paris attacks that ISIS members led. So back in 2015, I think the event was around November 17th, November 16th. And then the criticisms that came as the Obama administration, who was in control at this time, obviously, we haven't had the election of 2016 yet. So Obama's push to have 10,000 refugees enter the country, which again was needed because the Syrian crisis of how ISIS was present in Syria, and they were just killing and destroying towns and villages. So these people had nowhere else to go. So Obama wanted to open the United States to 10,000 of these individuals. There were some criticism that came from this, though, from people thinking that there would be ISIS wolves hidden amongst the people, or the sheep, essentially. You get the metaphor, wolves hidden amongst the sheep from a shepherd standpoint. But the metaphor is that these individuals would come in with these refugees, and then they would enter the country. So as a result, they would be able to essentially do harm to America without being without having any security measures, put up to stop them from entering. So while the process, as you see, was excessively long in many cases, 12 to 24 months before some of these refugees set foot in U.S. soil, there are some people here, as you look at legislators, especially local officials, that give some pretty damning information about how and why letting these people in is not a great idea. And the whole point is by the time you get to the second page, Roanoke Mayor David Bowers, and he quotes as, "I'm reminded that President Franklin Roosevelt felt compelled to sequester Japanese foreign nationals after the bombing of Pearl Harbor." And the idea is that when you have this attack on Pearl Harbor and the fact that the internment of Japanese Americans, again, through the areas that they left, plus these camps that you see on this map here, all right, where they were sent, the fact that this was accepted by people in the Supreme Court of the United States, they said it could be used in the future to do this against another group of people. Well, these politicians, from Louisiana, Virginia, Rhode Island, here's Missouri, and then you have Tennessee. You have all these individuals now using Japanese internment as the excuse as to why we should intern refugees coming from Syria in the wake of the attacks from ISIS in Paris. Even though there were no attacks of that scale in the United States, there were some smaller attacks, but they were led by people who were already in the United States that were they were radicalized. But while nothing of the scale happened in the United States compared to what happened in Paris, these officials are referring to a time in U.S. history with Japanese internment. The fact that we interned these Japanese Americans, and after we interned them, there was not a single attack after on U.S. soil during World War II. It leads people to believe that these behaviors not only were acceptable, but they worked. That from a strategic standpoint, to intern people for the safety of the United States, especially if they're like an ethnic or religious group of people, then this is what's going to keep us safe. Because you look back in history, here's Japanese internment. Oh, we did it then. It worked then. Let's do it again. It's not as simple as that. But these politicians wanted to use fear to get into Americans' heads, that this is the best way of doing things. So the article goes through here, and then obviously what we have here in core amounts of the United States. I do have a video from last week. If you have not watched that video from last week, go to that particular module from the 8th through the 12th and watch the video. It's a must-watch video. Hopefully you've watched that at some point and you saw this case of Korematsu of the United States. Fred Korematsu was arrested for being in the city of Oakland after the exclusion orders were upheld, and he was arrested. And he went to the Supreme Court to fight his case, and the Supreme Court ruled against him. All right? The Supreme Court ruled against him in the fact that he was not being imprisoned because the United States was doing this from a racist standpoint. The Supreme Court argued that he was imprisoned because we were at war with the Empire of Japan, and that these individuals were going to be forced to leave their areas, and as a result, they would essentially be cut off from the rest of the world from the standpoint of the ability of communicating. All right, so you can see that decision here. You can see other Supreme Court decisions that people think are wrong, immoral, and where Korematsu fits into this. All right, then you have the people, parts of this is to where the Korematsu case is the only one where, the only case in United States history where race was at the deciding factor as if to who we're going to imprison, and the federal government actually okayed this. Granted, you can argue Jim Crow laws and Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. But the issue with Plessy versus Ferguson was mostly through the South, where southern states really wanted to keep segregation alive. In the North, it wasn't as bad. In fact, many northern cities and municipalities, as they passed laws, did not want to have they didn't set up segregation as such because they didn't have as many, people of color living in the North. So this is the first Supreme Court case where race alone was used to determine about who would be uprooted and incarcerated, and then also who would remain free. If you're Japanese, you're going away. At least if you're living within the western half of this line going down here, all right? So if you're living as a Japanese American living west of this line, this exclusion area here, you were moved to these camps. Some people left before the exclusionaries, and they left on their own accord, and they actually were able to find their own homes in like Nevada, eastern Oregon, eastern Washington, parts of Idaho, parts of Arizona. So they were able to find their own places here, all right? But at the same time, this exclusion area, many people did not. I think it was over 120,000 people. Yeah, right here it says 120,000 people, and 70,000 of them were American citizens, okay? So what this now talks about is how this horrible decision by the Supreme Court could be used moving forward to do it again in the future. The fact that the President of the United States had the power to sign an executive order to say, you know what, these people are a threat, let's put them aside, not because we think they're going to do us harm, but because we want to make sure Americans are safe. And that's what they did. And many Japanese Americans willingly, you would ask somebody, it's like, why did you accept this? Many Japanese Americans would tell you that we wanted to do this to show the faith that we had in our country, in the United States, that we wanted to show them that we were not here to do them harm. So then you have other laws that are passed, and then you have Supreme Court justices. All these individuals were, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Antonin Scalia. They were alive at the time of this article. Obviously, both of them have passed away since then. But at the same time, you have points here that are made that Antonin Scalia stating here, in times of war, using this Latin expression, in times of war, the laws fall silent. That's the translation of this Latin phrase here. All right. And then, while it's wrong to do things like this, it won't be surprising to see it happen again. All right. So, and then they use, at this article, again, Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump. He just served his 4-year term as president. He was voted out. He's now an ex-president at this point. However, in light of current events with what happened with his second impeachment and that trial, he is still eligible to run for president again. All right, no matter what side you stand on this, it's still possible for him to become president again. No matter how unlikely it may seem, it's still possible for that to happen. So looking at all this evidence to move forward here about what you should focus on while reading this article, when you get to the prompt, if I go back here, excuse the timing it takes to get this done. All right, if you go to the prompt again, this is the 3.8, and this is the video must watch, the packet. If you don't get the internment and you want to take a look at that, you can read, this is a History Channel website, you can go to that. And then what I have here is the TDA prompt. It's a page you can go to, and this is the prompt itself. And then in class on I think it was Thursday, yesterday, I'm sorry, days are kind of blending together. On Thursday, we actually did our best to translate that prompt, all right? So instead of saying the text articulates the contemporary consensus, the article states the modern belief that imprisonment of people or internment of people was morally wrong in the past, but argues that it could happen again in certain circumstances. Write an essay reviewing the chances that the government would ever imprison residents of this country, and then use evidence from the article. So obviously you have two arguments, one of two arguments you could choose from. Either yes, you think the government could do this again, or no, you don't think the government it would be possible for this to happen again, all right? You may believe that, the one side that you hope it never happens, which is, that's a great stance to take, but you can also argue that it's possible based on certain circumstances. If you go back to the article, we also found parts of the article that would give you determinations, evidence that supports yes and no. What I might do is I might try to get some information up for you here so I can review that with you. But I want you to find information, no matter what side you take on this prompt, to defend and support your argument. All right. So, for instance, if you're looking at the yes side, that you think it can happen again. Again, not that you want to see it happen again, but you think it can happen again. There's plenty of evidence to suggest in the article. All those politicians, there's 5 paragraphs. We have all those local politicians from page 1 to 2 that are stating these very harsh things about people coming from Syria. Because they're elected officials, they can still propose laws, and it's still possible for something like that to happen. The fact that former President Trump was quoted in this, and he didn't discredit he didn't denounce the fact that people might have to be put in databases to be tracked, or they might have to be marked with symbols on their clothes, to essentially notify people that these are individuals coming from this part of the world. It sounds so much like the Holocaust, in terms of what could have happened in the United States in 2015. Luckily, it didn't get to that point, but at the same time, it's still possible that it could happen moving forward. You could look at the idea that in times of war, laws fall silent. That's another great one. The idea that, when we look at wars in U.S. history, in the United States, anytime there's a war going on, people give up a whole heck of a lot for the sake of winning that war. That's something you can use, all right? So on the side of no, you could use the idea that Supreme Court justices currently that were alive at the time of the article, they stated that they would never make a decision on that in the same way again. They would never allow that kind of decision to happen or to occur. So again, you have a ton of evidence in the article that you can bring forward. Obviously, the Non-Detention Act of 1971 takes the power of internment away from the president, which is one person who can make a mistake, and it can give it then to Congress, which is 435 people. Then going to the Senate is 100 people. So 535 people have to be on board with this, which makes it very unlikely for that to happen. So you can use the evidence to support your argument. So keep that in mind as you look for different places throughout the article where you think there's no. If you're a core student watching this, do your best to review the article, take a look at this prompt, fill out the TDA essay map throughout this week, and send me emails with pieces of evidence as to how you want to attack this essay. Like, hey, Mr. Miller, I want to use this, and this piece of evidence for this argument. What do you think about it? Send me an email. I'll give you some feedback, all right? So go through this stuff, review it, make sure you're comfortable with it, because throughout this week, we are going to be in the library and computer lab on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. All right, so keep that in mind. We have 3 days this week that students in class are going to be typing in these up. So stay on top of it. If you need help, let me know. Have a great day, everybody.